All right, welcome back to Wildfire Insider. For the last few days, we've been talking about some of those gusty winds that were forecast to come in on Saturday, which is now. And with those gusty winds, we are seeing an increase in activity on the eastern side of this fire. I actually purposely put off this video because I wanted to make sure we were covering this live at the peak of the winds, and it looks like we are starting to get some of that activity that we saw coming. Again, this is due to those southerly winds that are picking up as that trough we've been talking about is moving into California. Now the good news is after this afternoon, where our fire is most likely going to increase in activity, we are going to get some rain coming behind that as that trough moves in. So we'll take a good look at how much rain we are expecting, but first priority on this fire is just figuring out exactly what is going on the ground. So I'll just replay this video right here. This shows the eastern side of the fire, and certainly more activity we had than yesterday. The first thing that I notice is clear skies, but you are starting to see some of those clouds moving through. Yesterday, we just had very overcast conditions, and the smoke kind of just settled over the fire. That kept our temperatures down, kept our relative humidity higher, and winds were pretty minimal. You can see how the winds have picked up just based on how fast those clouds are moving right there. But more importantly, you can see how much the winds have picked up because of these smoke plumes showing a lot more activity than recently, and especially towards the end right there. So I think I want to just change this to 15 minutes because it looks like it's picked up even more just in the last 15 minutes, especially in that little plume right there. Now I say little plume, but that is more activity than we have seen in the last couple of days when temperatures have been cool, relative humidity has been high. I say little bloom though because it's not as bad as we have seen on the Mosquito Fire at times, especially during that peak of the heat wave when we were in the triple digits. Now with that being said though, due to these gusty winds, it increases the possibility of some spotting, and we are actually seeing some reports of that. I kept looking at Twitter throughout the morning and looking at the wildfire cameras we were just looking at, just waiting for the fire to pick up, knowing that these gusty winds were going to increase in some activity. And this was the tweet that I read that I said, okay, time to do a Wildfire Insider, see what's figuring out on the mosquito, see what's figuring out, or figure out what's happening on the Mosquito Fire. And then just, try to figure out if we're getting some spotting. The main concern, as we were talking about earlier, was they've done all these firing operations up here on the north, clearing out a lot of these fuels, putting in numerous dozer lines on this northern section of the fire. You can actually see that if we zoom in right there. All those strips are the firing operations. Those black X's are where we have completed dozer lines. And the big idea here is to keep the fire from rushing towards the north, which is exactly where the winds are going to be trying to push it throughout the day today, because before a big storm comes in, you typically get those southerly winds, and this is some of the windiest conditions we have had in a few days. Even on the central coast right now, the winds are stronger this afternoon than we have seen previously. So what I was just showing was the tweet that I saw, and I said, all right, fire's picking up, time to do a Wildfire Insider. I've said that a few times, the Wildfire Insider. Basically what this is us all kind of trying to figure out what's going on the wildfire together. Sometimes I'll do 10 to 20 minute videos where it's just me talking, and then a 2-minute concise video that kind of summarizes the top wildfire story of the day. This one, I don't actually really know what's going on the fire yet, so it's kind of just live, trying to look at all the links, figure out what's going on the ground, and then your guys' questions and comments always help as well. It was actually somebody's comment in one of these insider videos in the past that brought up the fact that we were going to get gusty winds on Saturday, and then we've been talking about it ever since. So finally, after 4 different tangents, this is the tweet that made me realize we should check out what's going on. He said, substantial increase in fire activity on the east side in the last hour. Far northeast side is main concern, making runs and spotting in the American fire scar. Don't want it getting close to Forest Hill Road, still a long way to go yet. So, few different things to unpack there. So, first, we can just look at that word, substantial increase in fire activity. What we can do is go to this map where you see those red stars. That's where the more recent activity has been on the fire. Key thing to remember that some of those red stars on the northern section here, and probably actually the majority of them, are due to the firing operation. So sometimes this map can be misleading because it looks like we're getting all that fire on the northern edge when really that's some good fire on the ground, as you'd call it. But something else we can do, and I paused right there because I was debating whether I should show this or not. We can look at the GOES detections, which shows where the more recent hotspots are on the fire. And the reason I sometimes don't like to show this is because it's able to sometimes pick up the heat in the smoke plume, and then it just makes the fire look like it's increased in activity way more than it has. But with that being said, it is sometimes useful to at least compare to how much heat we're picking up on the fire in the past. So let's click it on. Yeah, it looks like most of that activity picking up on the northeastern section of the fire. So right there. And it doesn't look like all of that would just... Let's go all satellites so we can see both at the same time. So I would say if the satellites were just picking up heat from like the firing operations, we would expect to see it out here because some of that heat would be in the smoke plume, and that's sometimes where the satellite goes wrong. The fact that we can see the heat right here, now it doesn't mean that the fire is increased all the way to that point, but it does mean that we're seeing a lot more activity right there than we have in the past. Now something else we can do right here is turn on wind plot, and you can see exactly why we have this increase in activity on the northeastern section of the fire. We have those winds. Imagine what's going on the ground right here. We have this fire. These aren't firing operations. I believe this is just the wildfire itself. These winds come in. They do a few things. They push the fire forward, but then more importantly, it can pick up some of the burning embers, drop them out ahead of the major blaze, start new little fires, and then those can then start to grow. Then the fire attaches with those. You get some more rapid spread that way, and then it just keeps going with those winds. Now, we just covered another thing that he said here. So fire activity on the east side in the last hour picking up. Northeast side is the main concern, making runs and spotting. So northeast side, fanned by those southwesterly winds, making runs, which means that's kind of the wind pushing that fire forward and it's going faster, spreading faster. And then the spotting part is what I was talking about, where it picks up burning embers, drops them out ahead of the major blaze. Now, the number one thing that I'm concerned about throughout the day today, and I forget if he says it right here. So northeast side is main concern in the American fire scar. We'll show the American fire scar. We're just kind of unpacking this tweet and adding everything that we know to it. So he says American fire scar. We can turn that on right there. So it sounds like with this American fire scar, let's turn wind off for the time being, not complicate it too much. That was kind of a big question mark on this fire because we didn't know how much fuel was able to regrow, because that fire is, about 9 years old now, so you get some growth coming back in. And it would be younger growth, and typically younger growth will have more moisture in it, so it won't burn as fast, and there's not just as much dead material on the ground or within the plants themselves. So you will typically get slower growth in a burn scar, even if the vegetation has grown back. But we have seen this fire continuing to spread into the American burn scar. For example, you can see where, let's just go fire perimeter, perimeters only. So you can see where there's overlap between the American burn scar and the Mosquito Fire burn scar now, or the Mosquito Fire perimeter, which tells us that some of the fuels have grown back there. If all the fuels were cleared out, then the Mosquito Fire would have stopped like a puzzle piece right on the American burn scar, which is actually something we've seen in some fires in the past, where it pushes up to a burn scar, then just stops, almost like what happened right here, but it would be the entire perimeter. So clearly, some fuel in this area that allows that growth, and it looks like that is what we're seeing right now. Again, the ghost detections is always going to overestimate how much growth we're seeing, but it does look like we've picked up on that northeastern side. So, next thing is, I think there was a follow-up tweet to this. They say the fire has crossed the power line easement near the hydro station. That was a control feature, but fire is now running up the hill in timber on the other side, burning in between the power lines and the penstock. Then he said the western side of the fire still looks good, per the same bunch on radio traffic. The fire that is into the American Fire burn scar is still a good 7 to 8 miles from the far northeastern section end of Forest Hill Road. Copters unable to work in Division M near hydro plant due to visibility. So, got some more things to unpack there. So, he says, good to 7 8 miles from northeastern section of Forest Hill Road. So, let's go over here. And Forest Hill Road, again, is this road that you see right here, Forest Hill Road. And you notice that they tied a lot of their firing operations into this road right here. And then not only firing operations, but when we come back here, we can see there's completed dozer lines all around that area as well, where you see those black X's right along Forest Hill Road. So it's almost like a triple protection barrier on this northern side. They cleared out a bunch of the fuels with good fire on the ground. They put in a completed dozer line stretching all the way up there. You can see how long that dozer line is. Unbelievable. It almost looks like it goes all the way from Forest Hill, all over this entire northern section to the very top where it looks like it's Westville. So, fuels cleared out due to good fire on the ground. Completed dozer line clears out more of those fuels. And then the road itself is also somewhat of a fuel break because you're not going to have brush in the middle of the road. So, we almost have 3 different layers of defense on this northern side of the fire. But as of right now, that tweet said it's still, 7 to 8 miles? 7 to 8 miles from the far northeastern end of Forest Hill Road. So let's come back here. And so that's where you know that these ghost detections are misleading. So we know that Forest Hill Road goes right along that fire perimeter. We'll turn off the American for a second. These ghost detections would make it seem like the fire is already at Forest Hill Road, but in reality, they're saying it's 7 to 8 miles away. So let's take a ruler here. Let's go tools, ruler. Let's say that that's the end of Forest Hill Road right here. 7 to 8 miles away is going to be, something like, that's 6 miles right there. So they're saying it's even farther away than that, which is, I actually don't know how that's possible. If the area of the fire where we're seeing activity is down here, and that's Forest Hill Road right there, we're measuring it at about 5.5 miles at the farthest point. If we were at that close point, that would be about 4 miles. So not exactly sure what that means. Maybe by that they mean Forest Hill Road continues to go up farther to the north here. So then they're going from the very northern end, maybe taking into account if it were to burn all the way through the American burn scar. That's probably what they mean right here. Thinking that, I wonder if we could see where Forest Hill Road ends. So let's zoom in here. Is it still Forest Hill Road when it's at this point? Not seeing any words popping up. So, I don't know. Clearly, we have increased in activity here. It is pushing it towards the northeast. We do have some spotting. But it sounds like, according to the fire scanner reports, that it's still a pretty good ways away. And that's the number one thing that we're going to be watching and trying to figure out throughout the course of this video is just how close it's getting, because our number one concern, as I was just saying, on this northern side, we've got the triple layer of defense with the firing operation, the completed dozer line, and Forest Hill Road. And with these gusty winds that we have at about 30 miles per hour coming from the southwest, the worst thing that could happen would be for a spot fire to jump over that triple layer of defense, as we're calling it, and then the fire just takes off to the north. And again, that's kind of the worst case scenario, but we have seen that on fires in the past. I remember covering the Dixie fire last year, where we just had an amazing firing operation around the entire northern edge of the fire. And then a windy day picked up, and burning embers just jumped right over the firing operation. Then it took off about 15 miles in one day. So that's the worst case scenario. But right now, just based on the information that we've been able to find, seems like we still have a good ways to go before that happens. It says 7 to 8 miles, and we have to remember that 7 to 8 miles is going to have to go through the American burn scar, where some of the fuels have been cleared out. So that's going to help to slow some of the growth. So interesting information there. Let's come back here, because it's been a while since we saw this. And the last time we looked at this one, we saw this smoke plume kind of jumping up. So right there was where we're seeing some of that increase in activity as we get closer in time. So this is almost real time as of right now. Just looks like this eastern side of the fire has continued to just be very active as we've had those gustier winds today. So now just looking at the live chat, looks like someone says, from Nevada, apologies from California for all of our smoke this last week. Breezy in a whole less smoke than yesterday. So sounds like your air quality is actually getting a little bit better. And again, it's kind of good news and bad news, because the reason your air quality is better is because the winds have picked up, and the winds, look at all that smoke in Nevada early in the day, the winds just blow that smoke out. And in the previous days, we had very weak winds, which was allowing that smoke just to settle down to the surface, which makes the air quality worse. But right now, winds picking up, blows the smoke out. But the reason that's also bad news is because actually you can see it on this satellite imagery now. I'll try to zoom way in here. And look at the northeastern section right there. You start to see that big increase in activity just in the last hour or two. Yeah, it was right when I saw that we were increasing activity was when I thought, all right, time to get ready to go live, try to figure out what's going on the ground. So one other thing we can do with this satellite imagery is turn on natural color fire right here. And this will probably make it easier to see that increase in activity. So this morning, almost nothing. And then right when you notice those clouds come in, it's almost instantaneous where the fire starts to pick up in activity and you see more smoke coming off of it. Clouds push in, they're bringing those winds with them, and the fire immediately just increases. And you can see how, I'll try to pause it right at the end there. So pause, zooming in right here. That's where we can see where we're getting all that activity on the fire. So you can actually see the burn scar if you look really closely. Looks like we have another burn scar down here. I forgot what fire that was. I wonder if that's the Caldor right there. I know the Caldor went all the way to South Lake Tahoe. That might be right there. But right there you can see that's the area around Forest Hill. So I guess that's some of the good news, is we're not seeing anything kind of picking up on the side by Forest Hill. And that's actually huge news, because if we look at here, all right, so it looks like those ghost detections showing a little bit more heat picking up since the last time we looked at that. Modus and Veers. So we haven't had a whole lot of activity in the Forest Hill area in the last couple days. We've just had cool temperatures, a lot of moisture out there. And that's great, because with these gusty winds, it would be hard for any kind of spots in this part of the fire that were still smoldering to like take off again, because a lot of those fuels have been burned out. But that was, when I was listening to CAL FIRE, they were still saying this is still the top priority on the fire, because you can see just how close it came to Forest Hill High School right there, and then all these structures on this side. Now this is kind of where it's good news though, is now all of that area, again, it's not completely burned out, which is actually good news, because I think there are some structures in here that hopefully aren't completely destroyed. So when you have a perimeter, it doesn't mean everything burned down here, but a lot of these fuels would have been cleared out. So now Forest Hill actually has a nice little southern boundary of protection. So that's going to help you not only throughout the rest of the Mosquito Fire, but throughout the rest of this fire season and then future fire seasons as well. So sometimes it's very scary when fire's coming in, but it'll help in the future now that a lot of those fuels that had been there for a very long time have been cleared out. So something that we haven't done yet is I haven't seen where the growth was yesterday. And the reason this wasn't like a top priority in this video is because this data doesn't include the activity that we're seeing right now. And we've probably already burned more in the last hour than we burned all of yesterday. So when we click this on, you can still see where we have some growth. Does look like that part of the fire right there was still active yesterday. Same with that little finger right there. And I would imagine those are the two spots of this fire that have kind of flared up now and are being fanned by those southwesterly winds, pushing it through the American burn scar, which is here, and then trying to just continue to push it up closer towards Forest Hill Road. Now the good news is that you can, if you look closely on this Google Earth imagery, I can't actually confirm this because I don't know how often they update the satellite imagery here, but it almost looks like you can see the burn scar from the American fire. And you can see that just in the difference of color right here. On this side of the fire, let's click over here, see if there's any fire history. Yeah, so nothing right there. No fire history. And then we have the American burn scar right there. Here looks a lot greener. Here looks a lot browner. So it makes me think that the American burn scar did clear out some of these fuels. And why is that important? The reason that's important is because this is the area of the fire where we're picking up the most heat signatures right now. Again, doesn't mean the fire has pushed all the way there. The satellites are most likely picking up some heat from the smoke plume, but it is at least good to see that some of the fuels have been cleared out here. So that's going to slow the growth as the winds try to push this fire towards the northeast. It actually just matches up perfectly where we have that fire activity. I'll turn some stuff off. Let's go just the Modus and Veers. Right there and right there were those two spots where we did see some of that growth yesterday on our Google Earth map. Then let's add the winds. Southwesterly winds pick up, start pushing that part of the fire forward, and then you get more heat activity being picked up on that side of the fire. So kind of all our different factors coming together, and that's why I always, oh, I see somebody just confirmed, yes, that's Caldor. Yeah, good confirmation right there. Unbelievable how large of a burn scar Caldor is, because I remember when it was pushing into South Lake Tahoe, jumped over Christmas Valley, and we had, I would say, the scariest wildfire situation that I've ever personally kind of forecasted for, when the spots were going over Christmas Valley and then started growing on both sides. And I just couldn't believe that the work that they did there to keep the fire out of that community. You could literally see it went right up to where the houses started, and then they were just able to steer the fire around. But huge burn scar right there. So right there, that tells us what the concern is on the Mosquito Fire. Let's see if Watch Duty's given us any new information. I'll upload it right here. Looks like it's 71,292. Let's see how much that is up from yesterday. Go to my profile. A little bit slow right here. And I'm just trying to compare with, so by the numbers, I posted this 20 hours ago, 71,292. Watch Duty right now is saying 292. So that could mean a few things. One, it might mean that they haven't done any recent flights, so they just haven't remapped the fire and they don't know the increase. And yeah, that's most likely what's going on here, because we've definitely increased in fire activity since 20 hours ago when I posted that tweet. And we can, just for proof of that, we can look at that right there. Now, when it comes to those winds, because that's the reason we're seeing this increase in activity. have been talking about this for 2 to 3 days now. Let's actually try to figure out how windy it is on the ground, see what we're dealing with here. So we'll zoom in around Lake Tahoe. So here's Forest Hill. Looks like the winds in Forest Hill, right there, that basically explains it. Much windier than the last couple of days. 24 mile per hour winds there. Then if we go what's likely closer towards the northern end of this fire, 20 mile per hour wind gusts. Let's check in here. Max winds, 19 mile per hour wind gusts. So the last few days, we've had below average temperatures, we've had abundant moisture, and our winds have been 5 to at max 15 miles per hour. So that right there tells you that the winds have certainly picked up. And what's concerning is that they're supposed to be picking up even more. So the model says 29 to 30 mile per hour winds. Later this afternoon, as we get into about 5 p.m., I think that was when it showed the fastest winds at about 31. So that is one other bad thing about these winds, is it's not just dying down. It's not picking up around 2 and then dying down around 4. I remember reading this on Watch Duty. They said winds will begin increasing at about noon today. Pretty spot on right there. Then peaking from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. So unfortunately, we're still going to have these gusty winds into 9 p.m. up to 25 miles per hour on the ridgetops. We're already seeing that just with some of those observations on the ground. Now, right here is where the very good news comes in. Sunday night into Monday, we'll see the heaviest rain. So we've been talking about a lot of the bad news so far on this fire, so let's check out some of the good news. This trough right here, you see it, or the cutoff low pressure system, that's what's bringing those gusty winds to California. Notice how close those isobars are together. That's an indication that you have those fast winds right there. But right now, that's bad for the fire. We've actually been seeing how much that's been increasing our fire activity. The good news is after today is when the rest of that system moves in, and then we actually start to get some rain with this. And then, so this whole system moving in is good news and bad news for the mosquito fire. Right now, we're in the bad news side of things with the gusty winds. And very soon, starting as early as, looks like they're expecting heaviest winds, what did that say? Sunday night into Monday will be the heaviest rain. So let's try to confirm that. Looks like a lot of that rain starts to move into parts of California as early as tonight, 11 p.m. Saturday. We actually do see a couple little early showers starting up in the Sierra. So I wouldn't rule it out that we get maybe a few sprinkles over the mosquito fire earlier than Sunday afternoon. But right here, that's when like the front officially arrives. And that's where some of our heavy rain starts building in to parts of the Bay Area, Central Coast. Great to see that. Then right there, that's Sunday at 2 p.m. That looks like when more of the real storm has moved over the mosquito fire. Moderate rainfall as we get into 5 p.m. Looks like we still have some rain 8 p.m. on Sunday. And then just continues and even picks up into 5 a.m. on Monday. Notice when the green turns into a darker color green, that means your rain is getting heavier. And then if you get that yellow color, that's where you have some actually decent rainfall rates. Now, I would say on this fire, it would actually be better for us to be picking up light to moderate rain, but for a longer amount of time, than heavy rain for a shorter amount of time. The big reason I say that is because with all the fire that we've had so far, you imagine that clears out a lot of the fuels, and it's the fuels and their roots that hold a hillside in place. It's like the structure of a hillside. So when you get some heavy rainfall over that heavy rain just basically soaks into the soils. There's no more roots holding that soil in place, and then that's where you get mudslides and debris flows. So that's where heavy rain can be bad, and especially over a short period of time. Now, what it looks like for us, though, is that we're getting light to moderate rain for a long period of time. So it's exactly what you would want to see. That is very interesting. That little purple color right there, it looks like Monday at 11 p.m. That shows a wintry mix. So not exactly snow, but let's check out the temperatures Monday at 11 p.m. Yeah, I don't know. Doesn't look like it's that cold. 52 around Forest Hill. If we're to click farther up here, 42. So, yeah, I'd say most of our precipitation is going to fall in the form of rain on this one. So, overall, let's see how much rain we're actually expecting. Actually, we didn't exactly figure out the timing. I would say, looks like our rain starts to pick up around 11 a.m. on Sunday over the Mosquito Fire. Really starts to move in 2 p.m. And then most moderate rainfall or heaviest rainfall that we're going to see on this is Sunday night into about 5 a.m. on Monday. But then we just keep picking up light rains. Looks like we're still getting some. That's probably the last of it. As late as 5 p.m. on Tuesday. So that's not only good for the rain coming in, dropping some literally precipitation on the fire. That's going to help take some of this fire activity and calm it down. But what also happens is when that much rain is coming in, your relative humidity goes way up. So let's go into Monday afternoon and check out, well, temperature-wise, we're much cooler, 56 degrees right there. Humidity, 96%. So even if we weren't getting rainfall, that's enough right there to significantly calm the fire down. So there's two things that are going to help us as this storm moves in. It's the rainfall, but then also that precipitation. Let's change views on this satellite. Or first, I'll just re-click in so we can remember what's exactly going on here, just in case anybody's new to the live stream. Right when those clouds hit, you watch the winds pick up, and then that northern edge of the fire looks to be the most active that we've seen. I would say that's the most heat signature I've been seeing this week. It might be close with that day where we got the spot fire on Forest Hill. But right there, it's almost like you can see where this system starts to arrive. But now what I want to do is kind of take a wider look to see if we can just see this overall system moving in general. And let's go true color right here. Oh, this is probably going to be a pretty cool shot once it loads. So while it's loading, I'll take a sip of water. All right, so right there, you can see this system. So that's probably the first thing that I should have said about this rain. Wow, this is an unbelievable system right here. You notice how just like clearly defined that is. If I look up winter storm weather graphic, spelled that wrong. A lot of times, low pressure. All right, this will be worth it if I can find it, so bear with me right here. I'm trying to find, all right, this looks close to what I'm looking for. So where you get a low, you get a cold front coming off sometimes in a little arch like that, and that's where your heaviest rain is going to be. And so keep that in mind, that's the center of your low, there's your arch, and then around that low, you're getting counterclockwise winds spinning. If we zoom in right here, you can see that's the center of our low. We're getting that counterclockwise spin around it, and then you can just perfectly see where that cold front is. So right when that cold front hits, our temperatures are going to go way down in California, and then it's also right along that cold front that you typically get your gustiest winds. So let's also try to check out cold front graphic. I should just always keep my lecture slides open. I taught Intro to Weather and Climate at San Jose State, and I should just keep my lecture slides open because they're better than what we see on Google here. So yeah, right. This is a better one that I was trying to show. There's the low. There's that cold front down there, which is exactly what we're seeing on this system right here. And then, if you want to actually see what a cold front looks like, it's the cold air coming in like this. As that pushes in, warmer air is less dense, so it gets pushed up above that cold front. As it's rising, it cools down. As the air cools down, it can't hold as much moisture. It's almost like squeezing a sponge. And then that moisture gets squeezed out into all these clouds, and that's why you get your heaviest rainfall right underneath where you get that uplift, clouds being produced, heavy precipitation right there. So that is what's going to happen once that front moves into California. So right now, just looks like it's the very kind of outskirts of this system starting to push through. But pretty amazing wide shot right there. So let's see if there's anything recent on watch duty. And then we can also just do a run through Twitter to see if there's any information coming out right there. So nothing on watch duty since 9 a.m. And that's why it comes in handy that the only accounts that I follow on Twitter are wildfire related. So my feed is literally just pure wildfire. Oh, some ads though too. Eat Ritz. So, this is more about the weather. Rob Maeda, great account to follow right there. This storm is so big it will take about 3 hours for the sun to fully set on it. Wow. So that big storm going into Alaska, just seeing a lot of weather content right now. I'm looking for more wildfire content. Yeah, not seeing too much. This is something. Yeah, you know what? Twitter, not really too helpful right now. So we're just going to click out of there and try to figure out for ourselves what's going on the ground. So clearly we have that activity picking up on the Mosquito Fire. You can see it down here. Let's actually go to that other shot. Let's click right here. So earlier this morning, not all that much. We had cool temperatures, high relative humidity. Then right as those clouds start to move in, that's where you see a lot of this smoke starting to really pick up. So now let's actually try to check it out from the ground. I'm going to reload this. Let's go the last 6 hours. Let's just see how it's changed throughout the entire day today. You notice pretty minimal earlier today, but already off the bat, you can see that smoke is moving faster than it was in previous days because of those gustier winds. You can also see these trees moving around a lot more than when we'd looked at this in previous days. Speaking of those trees, you can see how much fuel is in this area, which makes sense why we're seeing some of the growth that we have. Now, as those winds pick up in the afternoon, that's where you start to see this fire increase in activity. And then keep your eye right around here on the left side. That's when that plume starts to pop up. And that looks to be the area where we're seeing the most activity as of right now. So taking a look at where we are most concerned about right now, it's on this northern section of the fire. We have two areas where we did get some growth yesterday. Zooming into Google Earth, keep your eye on that spot right there, that spot right there. That's what it looked like yesterday. That's what it looks like as of this morning, or the most recent data we have. You can see where that new growth was. You can also see they did more firing operation up here. But you take those two little spots, and we come back to this map, and match those up with some of those red stars that we're seeing right there. Then we throw on the wind factor, and this explains why our activity has picked up. So those strong southwesterly winds take some of that heat activity and is trying to push this fire towards the north. Now, good news and bad news, or I'd say not exactly, it is sort of bad news. We're seeing this pick up in activity right here. We're also seeing some reports of spotting, which means it's picking up the burning embers, and the winds are carrying those embers, dropping them down into these fuels, and then it's starting new little fires. Now, where some of the good news comes in is all of the preparation that they've done on the northern side of this fire, which will keep it from jumping over Forest Hill Road right there. We not only have that firing operation, we have completed dozer line. So both of those would be areas where fuels have been cleared out. And then we have Forest Hill Road itself. So it's almost like a triple layer of protection on this northern side. And then even where the firing operation stops, it looks like we also have some completed dozer lines way up there. So that's where all of the good news comes in. now where some of the bad news comes in, and before I show this, so, oh, that's a great idea. I just peeked over at the live chat and somebody said hashtag Mosquito Fire on Twitter is showing some activity northwest side of the fire, Forest Hill camera. So that, I'm very glad you just said that. So let's go back to Twitter here. And let's check out hashtag Mosquito Fire. So column is on the north side of Last Chance, coming out from the bottom. Once the fire hits the top, activity should slow. Mosquito Fire information from Incident Command. So this is 7 hours ago. That's not really going to help us. Neil LaRoe, 2 hours ago, showed some of that activity popping up on, I think that's a radar right there. He's a great account to follow. 4 hours ago, 15 hours ago. Hey, there's one of my posts. So, 1 hour ago. This is probably the best that we haven't. Oh, this is actually the tweet that got me to start this video. So, substantial increase in fire activity on the east side of the last hour. Far northeast side is main concern, making runs and spotting in the American Fire scar. Don't want it getting closer to Forest Hill Road. Still a long way to go yet. And then later in that, we read it. He said 7 to 8 miles away at this point, which is really good because we not only have the triple layer of protection on that northern side from the firing operations, completer dozer line, and Forest Hill Road itself, we also have something else he just mentioned, the American Fire burn scar. So some of the fuels have been cleared out there, but clearly not all of them because the fire is still able to go into that area. Now I would imagine we're going to see a lot of growth right here today because that's an area where there isn't any fire history, so there's a lot of fuels that haven't burned in a long time, and then southwesterly winds are just going to take that hot spot and try to push it towards the north. So, looking at our live chat here, so, oh, that's another thing that we can do, is let's go to flight radar and see. I haven't used this in a long time, so bear with me if it kind of takes me a second to refigure out how to use this map. So zooming in here, there's Forest Hill, and you notice all of these different planes around here, and some helicopters around here too. Lots of helicopters actually. I wonder what happens if we click on one of these. Oh, it shows the recent path. So that's Las Vegas to Sacramento. Don't think that's what we're looking for. So this looks like one of those planes that's flying all around. Fire. Got some helicopters in here too. Yeah, this, to be honest, isn't my area of expertise when it comes to the fire operations. I'm a broadcast meteorologist, so my area of expertise is more the, I wouldn't call myself an expert, but the weather aspects of things. So the main thing that we're concerned about right now, just going right back into my wheelhouse, is the wind gusts. You can see it's the strongest winds that we've had in quite some time on this fire. Expected to get over 30 miles per hour today. When we were looking at the observations on the ground, looks like we have some winds around, max gusts around 24 miles per hour. I think that was the highest that we've seen yet. The good news is that temperatures are still below average and relative humidity is still pretty good, 43%. When there's more moisture in the air, you're going to have more moisture in your fuels, and that's going to help slow down some of the fire spread. But when you get stronger winds like what we're seeing right now and we'll continue to see until about 9 p.m., just clicking through there, still pretty gusty all the way into this evening, that's where it can pick up those burning embers and lead to some spot fires. So that's a good question. So Ken says, why do firefighters set backfires? Aren't they creating more fire? So that is a perfect question. It actually ties into the number one story that we're following today, which is the northern section of this fire. So right here and right here are the two spots, northeastern parts of this fire where we've seen the most activity. All of this up here is firing operations where they've put fire on the ground. And the reason they do that is because they're purposely clearing out the fuels right here, so that when that part of the fire that's active gets into that area, then the fuels are gone and the fire slows down, and in some cases just stops completely. So imagine if they didn't have that firing operation right there, and then we turn on these winds that we have today. That would take where we just have some wildfire, and it would just rush it straight up towards the north, right past Forest Hill Road, and then into all of this green vegetation that we see right here, and who knows how far it would go north after that. But because we have the operations or firing operations right there where they put some good fire on the ground, even if that increases to right there, hopefully it just stops in its tracks because the fuel has already been cleared out. Basically what they're doing is simulating a fire in the past. So you can also sometimes see this on burn scars. Doesn't look like the Americans, it's helping us, but it does look like it was long enough ago that some fuels have been able to grow back here. But occasionally you'll see something like this, where a fire bumps into another fire and then just stops in its tracks. That's why a lot of times when you look at fire history maps, it looks like puzzle pieces, where they just connect and then stop where the other one happened. It's because the other fire burned out the fuels, and then when you get the newer fire, no fuels to burn, stops right in its tracks. So that's why fire history can sometimes look like a puzzle, but that's also why they put fire on the ground. They're basically simulating an old fire which would have cleared out fuels. So hopefully that was a good explanation right there. But I'm glad you asked that because it ties into the main thing that we're wondering, which is how we're looking on the northern side of this fire. Let's come back here. I've only looked at one camera so far. We should actually look at a lot more cameras. But just to get an idea, you can see how big the smoke plume is on this northeastern section of the fire. Let's turn on natural color fire here. Not that much going on this morning. Then you see some of these clouds start to show up. That's the storm, or the very beginning of it. Brings with it some gusty winds, and that's where our fire activity picks up as well. Just keep your eye on the northeastern section, how bright it glows orange right there as those southwesterly winds pick up. Now the other thing that we can do is come here and turn on all satellites. So this will show the GOES detections. This is misleading because the satellites will sometimes pick up the heat that's in our smoke plume, and we do have a lot of smoke coming off of this fire right now, but it does tell you the general area of the fire that's seeing activity. So that's where there's some great news, is around Forest Hill. The satellite that usually overestimates wildfire, which it's doing right now, isn't showing anything around Forest Hill. So that is some good news right there. I'm going to turn that off just so anyone who's just joining the live stream doesn't see that and think that the fire's gone all the way there. But something we should do is just check out a few different cameras, because so far this is the only one we've looked at. And you notice how much faster that smoke is moving, how much more those trees are moving, and then as those winds pick up even more in the afternoon, that's where some of our fire activity starts to pick up. And this is the eastern side of the fire. So now let's check out if we could see anything else. So that sometimes shows, this showed the area around Forest Hill the other day. So this was Bald Mountain, El Dorado 2. And not really seeing anything right there. So that kind of confirms what we were just thinking, that we're still looking good in the Forest Hill area. Looks like we have, this looks like a smoke plume. Oh wow. So this is a shot that we have not seen yet. Let's click in here. And I'd imagine this is pointed at the northeastern section of the fire, because that's where we've been seeing the most growth and the most activity on the satellite camera. It looks like it's really starting to pick up. You notice how much that flag is moving. That tells you some of those gusty winds that we have. Pretty incredible shot right there. Now let's come back, see if we've got anything else that we haven't looked at yet. So some pretty poor air quality on that camera. Let's check that out. Let's go 1 hour. So this camera is most likely to the northeast of where we're seeing the fire activity, because that would mean the southwesterly winds would be blowing the smoke directly over this camera. So it means our fire is probably right around there. So let's see if there's anything I haven't really talked about yet. So hello to all the moderators out there. I see Robert's on. I see Cratimus is on. Wonder who else might be on here. Looks like Lucy's on here as well. So great job to the moderators. You guys are great for keeping the chat nice and about wildfire. That's what we're all here to learn about. So since fire activity is picking up, I should just show this. If you go to the link in the description for Inciweb, you can click on those 2 evacuation maps, and then it'll take you to something that looks like this. And that'll tell you when there's been different evacuation orders and warnings. Those change a lot. I don't actually cover them, but because by the time that you're watching this video, the whole situation might have changed. But those are the links if you are looking for them. So yeah, so I see somebody says, poor firefighters having to face the extra problems because of the wind. Hope the rain comes soon. So that's the main thing that we're talking about today. With that increase in wind this afternoon, certainly leading to an increase in fire activity that we're seeing right now. But the main thing that we're looking forward to is that rain. So I see you say, hopefully it comes soon. Let's see again how soon it was going to be. I forget the exact timing. So it looked like first decent rain maybe around 11 a.m. on Sunday, but then it starts to pick up by 2 p.m. Sunday, and then overnight is when we start to get that moderate rain. Looks like the best rainfall over the mosquito fires at about 5 a.m. on Monday, but then even then we continue to get some rainfall for quite some time after that, possibly even into Tuesday. And we haven't looked at the totals yet. Every time I look at this map, it gets better. So hopefully it's getting better again. It did. It is unbelievable how this storm has been changing. Let's take the wide view of this storm as I say this. Let's go there, and let's go visible. No, let's go true color. So this storm, we've been following this for maybe 3 or 4 days now, because we knew that at first it was going to bring gusty winds that would increase fire activity, but then we knew it was going to be bringing rain. Now, if you go back on my channel and look at a video from maybe 3 days ago when we first started talking about the rain, it looked like the mosquito fire was going to get 0.1 to 0.2 inches of rainfall. Now, as this storm comes in, and you can just perfectly see where that cold front is. I just can't get over that imagery right there. Now, when we look at how much we're going to get, we're in that purple color right there, which looks like we can now get over 1 inch of rainfall for the mosquito fire. So I wonder if they're saying that if that's a very new model, or if they're saying that in the weather section. Yeah, so they've updated what they're saying on Inciweb. So they said Saturday, winds will increase ahead of a cold storm system. That's some of the good news with this system. Right there is literally the cold front. You can see it. And once that moves in, our temperature is going to drop way down. We looked at the high temperatures on, I think it was Sunday. It might be Monday that the cold front hits. So temperature, yeah, high temperatures on Sunday, possibly even in the 50s. So that's looking great right there. So come back here. So Saturday, winds will increase ahead of the cold storm system. So once the system gets here, it's going to be good news for the mosquito fire. Right now, it's before the system gets here, so we're just getting the gusty winds out in front of the storm. Once that starts to move in is when we'll actually start to get some rainfall. So, gusting up to 25 miles per hour over the ridges in the afternoon and early evening. That's something that we have confirmed on the ground. We came over here, we looked right there, max gust 24 miles per hour. So, temperatures will trend cooler and humidity slightly higher. And that's great news right there, because our humidity, even though our winds have gotten a lot worse today, our humidity is still pretty good. We're at 43% is our low on that station, 34% on that one. Okay, that's a little bit drier than previous days, but still not that bad. We've seen times on this fire where our humidity was in the low teens. So there's a lot more moisture in the air, which means a lot more moisture in our finer fuels right now than we've seen on some times in the Mosquito Fire. Then from Sunday into early Wednesday, oh wow, they're going all the way to Wednesday for some of this rain to fall. Rain showers are expected, bringing 0.25 inches. So yesterday, I think they were saying up to 0.25 inches. And now, with those recent rain models we were just looking at, 0.25 inches to an inch of rain of precipitation. But then, drier and warmer weather returns Thursday. So that's where it's especially good news that we keep increasing. We'll back it up, and just because of how great this map looks right here. Right there. All that rain filling in, that's over an inch, at least on this model, according for the Mosquito Fire right there. And the reason it's nice to get all that rainfall is because that's going to soak into the soils. The fuels will still be exceptionally dry as we trend back towards drier weather, but you can guarantee a lot of this moisture is going to really help out. Now, it's not going to put the fire out or anything like that, but it is certainly going to help. So I would say, so no reports of lightning anticipated. I haven't really seen anything too much about lightning. I would say, let's check it out. Let's go to National Weather Service. And let's go to Forest Hill, California. So that's a great forecast if you're worried about wildfire. Temperatures in the low to mid 60s, so well below average. And then just guarantee, I shouldn't say guarantee, but pretty much a guarantee of that rain Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, maybe even Wednesday as well. Now, not showing any lightning right there. And in the more description part of it, not seeing anything about thunderstorms. Okay, Tuesday, then showers likely and possibly a thunderstorm after 11 a.m. So where you can get thunder, you can get some lightning. But overall, I'd say I'm not too concerned about lightning. Hopefully I should knock on wood as I say that. But the worst lightning that we usually get is when you have that monsoonal activity or like moisture from a tropical storm funneling in from like Southern California, because then it's associated with warm air. And it's such warm air that usually any rain that the thunderstorm's dropping doesn't even reach the ground. It evaporates before it gets to the ground. So your fuels, even though there's a thunderstorm above it, are still completely dry. It still can be like warm out. And then you get what you'd call dry lightning, where you're not getting rain, you are just getting lightning. And then that's very easy to start some fires there. And that's, again, more typical with like what we saw in 2020, where Tropical Storm Fausto, which was off here, funneled in moisture from south of us with some warm air. We didn't really get all that much rain. I don't even remember if we got rain, but then it created just all these thunderstorms and all this lightning that created all those fires. This one is like a proper winter storm. So this is coming from the north, and it's associated with a lot of rainfall, more rainfall than previous models were showing, and more rainfall shifting to the east than previous models were showing. Originally, all of the good rainfall was like right over the North Bay and down into the Central Coast. Now it actually looks like it's favoring the Sierra for some of the heaviest rainfall coming in, or the largest amount of communication, or largest amount of totals. I'll put it that way. Trying to get too fancy with my words here. So let's just, I think let's take one last look at Mosquito Fire on Twitter. See if there's anything like brand new coming out right now. Column is on the north side of Last Chance, coming out from the bottom. yeah, that was something we kind of already saw. I think as of right now, we're caught up to speed on the Mosquito Fire. That way, we know as much as anybody else on this fire, except for the people on the ground. Let's just take another look at watch duty, see if there's been any increase there. So actually there has been. So this one, substantial increase in fire activity on the far eastern side of the fire with the increase of winds per earlier radio traffic. So what they're talking about, eastern side of the fire, and particularly the northeastern side of the fire, and then the winds that they're talking about right there, taking those hot spots, pushing them towards the northeast. Now, let's just put these right next to each other so it's easier. The fire is into the American Fire burn scar. We can add on the American Fire burn scar. So, yeah, it's in there. It already was in there. But we just know that that's where we're seeing some activity, and it's pushing forward in that area. The way that we know that we're seeing some activity in that area, I think this is the best map that we've been able to find today. Not that much activity early in the day. Clouds show up. With those clouds, we get those gusty winds. All this on the eastern side of the fire picks up, and we get that real hot spot on the northeastern section of the fire. So, just coming back here, the fire is into the burn scar. The fire crossed the power line easement near Middle Fork American River Hydro Power Station. Number of copters continue to work the eastern side of the fire. No notable changes on the western end of the fire. So, nothing changed on the west. That's some great news there. That's good to confirm what we were already seeing, where lack of activity on this western side. What we can do, actually I don't even know if we can do this, is let's take this latitude and longitude and put it into Google Earth. I'm not sure if this works, but let's try it. Because this is where they're saying the fire has just crossed. Oh, so they're more talking about the southeastern part of the fire. So right there, this is new information. So fire crossed the power line easement near the Middle Fork American River Hydro Power Station. So zooming in here, it looks, I don't know if that was a firing operation or a spot fire right there. Might have been a spot fire right there. But they've now said the fire has crossed, sounds like it's crossed that power station. So zooming out, let's get a wide view of where we are on the fire here. Okay, zooming in. And let's see if some of this is new growth from yesterday. Let's come down here, turn off today's data. Yeah, so some of that is some new growth on this part of the fire. And then, not surprised, we've continued to grow right there. And just unbelievable how steep and rugged some of the terrain is in this area. I can't imagine if they were able to get any type of dozer over on that part of the fire. I would be amazed if they could. So it looks like there are some completed dozer lines around. Let's try to figure out let's try to match it up and see if there's any dozer lines in this part of the fire. So looking at it right there, we've got this finger that comes out, and then it's kind of that section right there. The tip of it is where that hydropower is. So let's come back here. Looks like it's the tip right there. And yeah, not a big surprise, not seeing any completed dozer lines in there. But that makes perfect sense, because when we zoom in here, I don't imagine it would be possible to get dozers in an area that is that steep like that. So I'd imagine they're just going to be, I think that same exact update was talking about some of the helicopters on the fire, right? Number of copters continue to work the eastern side of the fire. And that was something that we saw on flight radar, some of those helicopters just hovering over the fire right there. So I see somebody just asked, that happened today because of the winds? And then somebody says that happened because the firefighters like to light more fires. So I'll do a little correction here. So the eastern side of the fire, you look at where some of this hotspot activity is, and this is just the fire itself. This is just the fire doing its thing. Winds come in, takes some of that fire and pushes it towards the northeast right there. Now, what it's also doing is picking up some burning embers, dropping those burning embers, leading to spot fires, and then leading to growth right there. Now, prepping for it does say that firefighters like to light more fires. And actually, that is true, but the reason that they're lighting more fires is because they're trying to stop the fire from growing wildly. They're literally fighting fire with fire. And then we saw that on this northern section, cleared out a lot of the fuels right here, so that when these southwesterly winds pick up today, instead of taking where the fire itself was just burning naturally and it just rushing up towards the north, now it's going to bump into where firefighters lit fires and cleared out fuels, and hopefully it's just going to stop in its tracks. So, I'm going to hide user from channel. Adios, buddy. That was enough. We answered his question, but I think that's enough conspiracy for today. All right, I think we've yeah, conspiracy theory is not helpful here. No, but we did get an opportunity to talk about why there's good fire and bad fire. So yeah, not always the worst when that kind of thing comes up, because the best way to fight bad ideas is with good ideas. So let's see what Gary's saying. There's a lot of dead fuel left over in the American Fire burn scar. Forest Hill Road goes all the way to Soda Springs. So this actually might help answer a question that we were wondering earlier. Because right now they're saying that the most active part of the fire was 7 to 8 miles from the end of Forest Hill Road. So let's try to type in Soda Springs here. Let's see if it takes us to the end of Forest Hill Road. Oh wow, that's way up there. So let's just use our tool. Where's our tool? Tools, ruler. So fire, I would imagine it's right about there. And Soda Springs, that's about maybe 19 miles away. So we got some good distance between the fire and Soda Springs as of right now. But I think what I was going to say is we've pretty much been updated with everything that's going on the ground right now. So what I'm going to do is I'll try to make it as concise as possible of the most important information that we've learned so far. So, and I'm going to click back on this video because I think this was the best one that we've seen. We'll go to 3 hours right there. Alrighty, so I'll try to be concise here just in case you're just joining the live chat. I'll try to say everything that we need to know about this fire. So the Mosquito Fire was pretty calm. Like the last few days we had low temperatures, pretty high relative humidity. But the big story is that we have this low pressure system, not to get too weathery there, but that's moving into California right now. And the good news is it's going to bring a decent amount of rainfall. Actually, a lot more rainfall than the original models were showing. Now looks like we could get over an inch of rain for the Mosquito Fire. But the bad news is that as it comes in, it first brings some gusty winds before that rainfall can start to come in. So you can see where some of the there's more clouds on this. That's more to the west of us. That's not going to bring rain just yet. What that low is bringing as of right now is just those gusty winds, and you can see what happens right when those clouds hit. That's where some of the winds pick up, and that's where this hot spot on the northeastern section of the fire just kind of starts to take off. So if we want to see this in real time, this is a time lapse of the last 3 hours. Key things that I noticed yesterday, we just had smoke settling down all the way over this fire. It was really poor air quality. So that's maybe the one benefit of the winds coming in today. It's cleared out a lot of that smoke. But the bad side of those winds is it's also just increased that fire activity with those clear skies. And in this, you can just see how much faster the smoke is moving today than in previous days, which just tells you how fast those winds are blowing. Now, the main concern there is with those winds, it's able to push this fire towards the northeast. So we've confirmed that we're seeing some growth in this section of the fire right there. And we figured out that it went past what is labeled as some kind of hydro power station right there. We've confirmed that it's grown in that area. But the main spot that we're watching the closest throughout the day today is this northern section, where they have put in a large amount of firing operations. That's that whole strip right there where they've cleared out fuels, preparing for these winds that is going to try to push this fire towards the north. They've also been putting in a large number of dozer lines here, all the way right there, all the way right there. And then we also just have a fuel break, which is Forest Hill Road itself. So lots of protection on this northern side, and it's good that we have it because those winds are picking up right now. The fire activity is clearly picking up right there. You can see it. And unfortunately, we're still going to have very gusty winds even as we get into it looks like until about 9 p.m. tonight. We still have pretty gusty winds out there. Let's go 9 p.m. tonight. Looks like we still have some gusts at about 27 miles per hour. So still expecting a lot of growth over the next 4 hours with this. So I think we're going to have to watch it very closely. As of right now, numbers-wise, we haven't had any updates to our acreage or our containment numbers today, but we'll see what they end up being at about 7 o'clock tonight. That's usually when we get the more recent numbers. So bad thing going on the fire right now. Those winds have picked up, seeing some gusts up to 24 miles per hour right there. These are actual stations on the ground. Looks like that one's 21 miles per hour. And well, that's bad news. And if we look at the Wharf S fire model, it's most likely taking into account these winds picking up. You notice those winds shift around this afternoon. Watch right here about 1 o'clock. It'll start to show more fire activity, more growth towards the north and northeast, right in line with those winds. Now, one thing I will point out is this model doesn't take into account firing operations or operations in general. So that growth that this model was showing on the northern side of the fire isn't likely to happen because that's kind of fire that they've controlled. But this growth around here is what my concern is right there. So as those winds pick up, which they're doing right now, the model shows a big increase in activity. Now, the good news is that this model it's one of the best wildfire simulations in the world, but it doesn't take into account what operations are doing on the ground, so it can sometimes overestimate the growth, but it does kind of show us what the fire would likely do if we didn't have the 3,453 personnel on this fire trying to control this thing. Now, the other thing that we've done is we can see actually where we're picking up the most heat on this fire right now, going all satellites. This does overestimate drastically how much fire growth there is, but it is sometimes a useful tool to see where we are picking up heat. Looks like it's mostly on that northeastern section, but we have seen and confirmed some growth down here as well. So with all that, that's what's going on right now. Increase in activity due to the gusty winds. That's everything I said in a sentence right there. And it's everything that we've been seeing coming over the last few days. The good news is, though, let's take the wide shot. This was the map of the day right here. Wide shot, true color. The good news is right there, that is this storm system moving in, and it's an actual storm system. So when we're saying we're expecting rain, it's not just kind of those monsoonal light showers you can get with like a thunderstorm or two like we've had throughout this summer on a couple of days. This is like an actual type of storm that you'd see during winter. You can actually see where the cold front is right there. Once that hits, that's going to cool our temperatures down. And before that hits, that's where the heaviest rainfall is going to be. So we still have a fair bit of distance until that heaviest rainfall is over the Mosquito Fire. But eventually, that heavier rainfall will be over the Mosquito Fire. We can click through here. It looks like it starts to pick up around 2 p.m. on Sunday, continues Sunday afternoon, and then actually increases into 5 a.m. on Monday, and then even just continues into Wednesday as well. And this is, I think, the best news of this entire video today, is every time we look at the forecast models, they just increase in how much rain we're getting on this fire. So we just click through here, and while early models were saying that the Mosquito Fire is going to get 0.1 inches of rain, now it looks like we're going to get over an inch. Now that's not going to put the fire out, and we do have some warm and dry weather coming in next Thursday, but that is some great news to see right there. So I think that's a nice positive note to end on. With that being said, I'm going to wait maybe 2 or 3 hours till we start to get more information. I think we've kind of figured out everything that we have to work with right now. I'm going to wait for new information to come out, and then I'm going to do a 10 to 20 minute just quick video summary, and then a 2-minute, even quicker, concise summary of everything that we've learned about the Mosquito Fire throughout the day today, and then everything we're expecting as this rain comes in. So if you want to stay updated on that, you can subscribe to this channel on YouTube, and then you can also follow me on Twitter, where until then, I'll still throw out a few posts just in case there's any changes that we need to know about. So you can also follow me there as well, and I'll see you all in a couple of hours. Hope this video was helpful. Thanks for watching, and let's keep our fingers crossed, hoping that rain really does come through for us. Right now, it's looking good.